Have you ever just stopped and wondered about the mind's absolute potential? I mean, what if consciousness could exist totally, completely detached from the physical world? No body, no senses, no form, no matter. It sounds wild, right? Like something straight out of science fiction, but it's actually a core concept in Buddhist psychology. It describes these states of mind that are so incredibly refined they're considered formless. The traditional term for them is Arūpāvacara Cittas, and today we are going to dive deep into this fascinating territory of the mind. So here's our game plan for this journey. First up, we're going to get super clear on what consciousness beyond form actually means. Then we'll start our ascent, moving step by step through the 4 distinct formless realms. And this, you guys, is going to lead us to a pretty profound question. Can life really exist without a body? And finally, we'll unpack what these teachings suggest is the mind's ultimate, most subtle state of being.
Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. Before we can climb this incredible ladder of consciousness, we really need to understand what this immaterial sphere even is. What does it truly mean for the mind to operate beyond the physical world as we know it?
So what in the world are Arūpāvacara Cittas? Well, these are not your everyday, run-of-the-mill thoughts about what to make for dinner. Not at all. They are a highly specialized type of consciousness, often called exalted or sublime. Now, the real key here is how they're achieved, through incredibly deep, focused meditation, where the mind literally learns to let go of every connection to the physical world. Sight, sound, touch, you name it. It's a state where consciousness becomes aware of, well, only itself.
Now, you might be thinking this is all just some vague philosophical concept, but that's where you'd be wrong. Buddhist psychology is famous for being incredibly precise. And within this category of formless consciousness, it identifies exactly 12 distinct types. That specificity is so important because it's like a detailed map of the mind, where every single state has its own unique quality and its own job to do. And those 12, they are neatly sorted into 3 groups of 4. First, you've got the moral ones. Think of these as the wholesome actions of the mind that create some seriously powerful karmic results. Then you have the resultant states, which are the effects of past actions. They literally determine your state of being. And finally, the functional states. These are only experienced by fully enlightened beings, and they're just moments of pure experience without creating any new karma. And this distinction is absolutely crucial because it determines whether these states lead to future lives or are simply profound experiences right here, right now.
Okay, get this, because this is where it gets really interesting. Despite all those different classifications we just talked about, all 12 of these states share the exact same foundation. They're all built on 2 core mental qualities: perfect equanimity, a mind that is just completely balanced and totally undisturbed, and unshakable one-pointedness, which is just absolute, total concentration. In meditation terms, this is the highest level of absorption, what's known as the 5th jhana. Think of it like being in the deep end of a swimming pool. It's incredibly still, unbelievably clear, and just so peaceful. All right, now that we've got the building blocks down, let's begin the ascent. We are about to go on the meditative journey itself, moving through the 4 formless realms. Each step is going to take us to a more subtle and profound level of awareness. This is the ladder of pure consciousness. Let's climb. Our climb begins right here, at the very first formless realm, the sphere of infinite space. And just like the name suggests, the meditator is about to go beyond the limits of physical objects and enter a state of just boundless perception. So how do you even get here? Well, picture this. Imagine a meditator who has perfected their concentration on a physical object, like a colored disc. They've held it in their mind's eye until it's perfectly stable. Now, to make that leap into the formless, they mentally remove the disc and shift their attention to the empty space it left behind. They then expand that perception of space outwards infinitely until their mind is filled with nothing but the concept of boundlessness. The object isn't a thing anymore. It's the very idea of infinite space itself. Okay, so once the mind is completely stable in that feeling of infinite space, it's ready for the next step, which is even more subtle. Welcome to the second realm, the sphere of boundless consciousness. Now, this next step is a huge shift in perspective. It's pretty wild. The meditator lets go of the concept of infinite space and instead turns their attention to the very consciousness that was aware of that space.
The mind literally turns inward to watch itself. So the object of focus is no longer something out there like space, but the very awareness that is perceiving right in here. It's pretty meta. From boundless consciousness, we go even deeper into subtlety. The third realm is called the sphere of nothingness. Now, that sounds like a paradox, doesn't it? But it's actually a crucial step in this whole refinement of perception. To reach this state, the meditator has to make another very subtle shift. They now focus on the absence of the boundless consciousness they were just experiencing. Now, they aren't just looking at a blank void. They're actively contemplating the concept of nothing is there, the empty space created when the previous object of meditation is let go of.
And this brings us to the summit, the final and most profound state of all, a realm with a name that perfectly captures its own mystery, the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception.
At this absolute peak, the object of meditation becomes the consciousness of the third realm, that sphere of nothingness itself. But the awareness now is so incredibly subtle, so refined, that the act of perception itself becomes almost impossible to detect. Imagine trying to see the clearest, calmest water. It's there, but it's so transparent it's almost invisible. That's what's going on here. You can't say perception is gone, but it's so faint you can't really say it's there either. This is considered the most subtle and peaceful state of mind that is even possible.
So, we've climbed this incredible ladder of consciousness. But what does it all mean? What are the real implications of reaching states like these? And that brings us to our next section, where we're going to ask a really startling question. Can this actually lead to a life without a body? Hey, remember those resultant states of consciousness we talked about earlier? Well, this is where their power becomes crystal clear. In this framework, the state of your mind at the very moment of death is what determines the first moment of your next life. So if someone has mastered these formless meditations, their mind is deeply, deeply conditioned to exist without any reference to a physical body. So the result of that powerful mental state can be a rebirth into a realm where there's no physical form at all. Beings can exist in these realms for eons, experiencing reality purely as consciousness.
And this brings us right to one of the most fundamental questions, doesn't it? This entire framework suggests that, yes, under these very specific conditions, consciousness can be untethered from a physical form. I mean, that's a staggering idea to think about. The function of these states also really depends on who is experiencing them. For most people, achieving them is a powerful moral action, a karma, that leads to a future life in one of these formless realms. But for an enlightened being, an arahat, it's totally different. They use the functional version of these states to simply experience profound peace and bliss in this life without creating any karma for the future.
So, what is this sublime consciousness actually made of? What's under the hood? In our final section, we're going to look at the very blueprint of these incredible mental states. The answer, once again, is incredibly precise. Every single one of these 12 formless states is said to be made of exactly 30 mental factors, or cetasikas, all working together in perfect harmony. These are the basic ingredients of consciousness, things like contact, feeling, perception, volition, plus more refined factors like confidence, mindfulness, and of course that equanimity and one-pointedness we keep talking about. It's like a complex recipe with exactly 30 ingredients. So what's the big takeaway from this whole journey into the formless? Well, these states, from infinite space all the way to the very edge of perception, are more than just philosophical ideas. They represent a detailed map of the mind's deepest potentials, a potential for a kind of peace and subtlety that is just way beyond our ordinary day-to-day experience. And crucially, it's a potential that this framework claims can be systematically cultivated by training the mind. And that leaves us with one final question to really chew on. In that highest, most subtle state, has our familiar sense of awareness just vanished? Or has it been transformed into something so profound, so different, that our language simply doesn't have the words to describe it? It's a question that really pushes the boundaries of how we think about the mind. Thank you for exploring it with me today.